Every year on the fourth Sunday of Easter, so-called Good Shepherd Sunday, I remember an episode that happened years ago to me. I was fortunate enough to be part of a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, and we had been to Jerusalem and seen all the holy places, and we were now in a bus going to Galilee in the north. We were barreling down the road when up ahead a great flock of sheep stood at the edge of the roadway waiting to cross. And I felt sure that we were going to have lamb chops that day for dinner because our bus driver did not slow down. And I thought this is going to be a catastrophe. But nothing happened. We sped by. The sheep remained at the side of the road, but as I looked back, I saw that they crossed with the shepherd leading them. My experience with sheep is that, especially in this country, when we want to move them, we drive them ahead of us. The shepherd goes behind, sometimes with the help of a few dogs, and pushes the sheep ahead of him wherever he wants them to go. But in Israel, and I suspect probably in most parts of the world, it's the shepherd who guides the sheep by going ahead of them. And that's the metaphor that Jesus is using in the Gospel of John. I have a sister friend who says when she gets to heaven, she's got a few questions that she wants to ask the Lord to explain things to her. I have one too, because I think this passage from John is a mixed metaphor, which I was always told not to use. Jesus is the shepherd, he's also the gate, and that could be a little confusing. In our time, we are surrounded by the voices of many, many people who want to lead us. Many shepherds who want to guide the way we live our lives, the way we move forward in history, both as a church, as a nation, or even the whole planet. Many things are up for discussion. Many changes are being broached to us. But we need to discern the voice of our shepherd before we make any of those decisions. We need to discern the voice of the Good Shepherd so that we can separate his voice from other voices and to follow him. We need to become so familiar with his voice that we will not make a mistake in following him. How do we become familiar? Well, first of all, I think we have to listen often to what he says to us in the words of Scripture, especially the New Testament, where we have the actual teachings and words of Jesus. We also, like we do with our friends, need to engage in conversation with him. Isn't it amazing we can pick up the telephone and hear somebody, and because we have spoken with them so often, a spouse, a friend, a child, a coworker, we know who they are immediately. We recognize their voice. We need to do that with Jesus. Our conversation with him should be so frequent that we recognize his voice immediately. We also need to be silent. Jesus promised us his Spirit, who speaks from within us. And that demands that we be silent enough to hear the whispered voice of the Spirit of Jesus. He said, I will send you my Spirit, and he will lead you into all truth. We must really believe that that promise will be fulfilled. We must look for being prompted by the Spirit of Jesus who is within us and will never lead us in a wrong direction. And we also need never to separate ourselves from the community of Jesus' disciples, from the rest of the flock, if you will. There is no such thing as go-it-alone Christianity. We must always be connected with our brothers and sisters in the faith. The The sheep in my episode in the Holy Land years ago were safe because they never went ahead of the shepherd. They listened for his voice. They followed his instructions. St. Paul tells us we live by faith, not by sight. But he also says faith comes from hearing. St. Benedict in his rule says that his monks must listen with the ear of the heart. That's our task, to keep our ears peeled for the voice of our shepherd.